My mom used to tell me that when I was little, I used to write like songs and stuff like that. But of course, things that weren't very serious. So I didn't take them very seriously. She didn't take them very seriously. But when I started secondary in like senior two, I was blessed to be in a school that valued the writing culture. I was in Namagunga. Those who are from Uganda know it. Yeah, I was in a girls' school called Namagunga.
Mujevale, Mujevale, Mujevale. My name is Bani Kibuka, and welcome to another episode of the Ugandan Ball Talk Show. So, Phoebe, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Is your name pronounced Phoebe, Phoebe? I don't know the other pronunciation. You know, when I came to the US, so I focused on how people pronounce other people's names. So, how do you pronounce your name?
Honestly, my name has okay. Personally, I pronounce it as Phoebe, but of course, being from an African country, it has so many pronunciations. People pronounce my name in so many different ways. I'm Phoebe. I'm PD. I'm Phoebe. I'm Phoebe. Like it's something that really used to bother me, but like now it's not something that bothers me a lot because people are different. They have their different cultures and how they pronounce names, so it's understandable.
That's the thing I explain to people in the United States. So my name is Bonnie. Most of my friends in Uganda call me Bonnie, others Bonnie, others like Bonnie or whatever. So in the US, they ask me, "How do you pronounce your name?" And like most of them say Bonnie. So that's how like I picked up the pronunciation. And they always want to ask you, "How do you pronounce your name? How should I pronounce your name?" But to be honest with you, I tell them that we have a lot of people from different cultures. We have a lot of people from different tribes. So how they're gonna pronounce your name is gonna differ. Because if you go to like northern Uganda, they'll pronounce your name different. If you go other places, so. But yeah, I wanted to make sure how you pronounce yours. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, welcome to my podcast. So
Thank you so much for having me.
I got to learn about you when I hosted Jen. So Jen, I've never met you. I didn't know you, but when usually on my podcast, at the end I ask people a question of who they want to see on the podcast, which I'm gonna ask you yourself too. And then she referred you to come to my podcast. So, like I said, I didn't know anything about you, but she said some of the things we're gonna talk about. You do poetry, you're a model, you're in school, and then doing my own research, I realized you have a podcast too. So I'm gonna ask you about all that. So our conversation today is gonna be around your life, who you are. So just without going into the stuff I told you about, just tell us who is Phoebe? Like, who are you as a person?
Um, Whenever, first of all, that's I think the question that I like the least
Yeah.
because I believe that sometimes the way you see yourself might not be the way other people see you. But according to me, whenever someone asks me that question, the first thing I say is that I'm an artist. Phoebe is an artist. I'm an artist. I'm a Christian. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. Yeah. Without going into the things that I do.
Okay.
That's basically who I am.
Yeah. Without going into the things you do, because that's actually where I'm gonna base my podcast today to just talk about that. Because I picked interest in what you do and listening to some of the things. I follow you on WhatsApp, and I saw a video you put out for your podcast listeners, reminding them that you're still alive and you're gonna bring some more episodes. So, what's your podcast? How did you start a podcast?
Okay. My podcast is called Inklives. You can find it on so many platforms. It's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Anchor, Google Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on like all those Castro, all those podcasting platforms. How I started it. I started it in 2020, around September, the beginning of September, because its anniversary is on the 9th. As I mentioned before, I'm a poet. So during that period, I was in senior 4. So that was like O-level finals for the first half of high school, and they had pulled us out because of COVID. And you don't know when we didn't know when we were going back to school. We were supposed to go do exams. So in all that ruckus, I was trying to look for ways to work on my craft and make it more known to people, to give it to people, how I was going to share my work. And I was trying to look for different ways on how to do it. And when I did some research, I noticed that so many people use YouTube, so many people use Instagram and those kinds of platforms, but very few people in Uganda make podcasts.
Right, that's
like
true.
they're very, very, very few. So I wanted to try out the platform because, first of all, the only thing that you're using to engage your listeners is your voice, maybe, unless you do like what you do, those podcasts where you do YouTube and videos and stuff like that. And I personally like talking. I like talking a lot. I like talking. I like sharing my opinion. I like discussing things with people. So I wanted a platform that could give me an opportunity to do all that, and podcasting fit perfectly. And yeah, the fact that it was unique, I could do what I wanted to do. And even when you look at people who share their poetry, they just share their poems, like they just post their poems out there, or videos of themselves reciting their poems and stuff like that. But for me, my podcast, I do much more than that. Yes, there are a few episodes where I share my poems and what they mean to me, but most times on my podcast, I talk about poetry-related concepts, like different aspects about poetry that interest me, different poets, different books, different things that made poetry what it is today, how poetry was in the past, how it is now, how I think it will be in the future, that's kinds of things. And sometimes I host people, different poets, people who like poetry, people who enjoy it, ask them what they think about it. And from time to time, we get poems and we discuss them. So things like that.
That
That's
is very
basically what my podcast
interesting.
is about.
You might have noticed me smiling when you're talking about like the stuff when you're explaining, because you really hit on some points that define who I am and how I say my podcast. It was through the pandemic, but I'm gonna break down what you just explained to us a little bit. I don't like interrupting people when they talk, so I usually just let them have their flow, and when they're done, I go back in a little bit. So you mentioned about school. So you mentioned school closing during the COVID. Um, how was that like? I mean, just a tiny bit of like you were in school and something like COVID happened. How did that happen, and how has that affected you?
First of all, during that period, I was so scared. I had a lot of fear in me because the thing that this COVID period has brought out the most is the uncertainty. Like, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You don't know whether you're going back to school. You don't know whether you're going to live. Like, you're in that uncertainty, you understand. And in that period, I was so scared because I was supposed to do exams. I didn't know whether I was going to do exams. I didn't know when I would do them or if I would even do them. So I was really, really depressed during that. I was so depressed. I was so worried. I had a lot of anxiety. So it wasn't a good time for me,
Yeah,
honestly.
that is sad that to even know a bunch of kids like they've been home for like 2 years, without going to school. And I have some of my families and friends back in Uganda who have gone through that. Um, the other thing also you talked about, which I'm gonna ask about later, is the poetry. But before I go into the poetry, we're gonna just stay on the podcast thing about like you mentioned things like I like to talk, and that's the whole reason why I say my podcast. Like I would talk from morning to like evening, just talking about stories, and that's the whole reason why I wanted to do a podcast. I don't know anything about poetry. I mean, I know a little bit because I've listened to poetry and I love it, but I can't do it. I'm not that talented to do that. Um, but yeah, I said my podcast to kind of just share uh, topics like these with people, like bring people like you to know about your life and let other people know about your life, what you do. And it's something I did out for fun. Like it's not like my job. I have another job. That's why today, when I had some time, I was like, oh, I could record a podcast. I didn't go to work today, but just to share empowering stories to all the people. But I focus on Uganda, but a lot of people listen to my podcast all over the country. I'm blessed enough to live in the US. So some of my friends from the US listen to the podcast, but mostly I want the people back in Uganda, my friends, to listen to these stories, whoever they are, like you, how they're going to listen to yours, to pick out something to empower them. So I'm proud that you also started a podcast there in Uganda, and I want a lot of other people to start this podcast because this is also another way to create awareness of some of the things we don't know. So, like if people tap into your podcast, I'm gonna learn about poetry, which I don't know. Like I'm gonna listen to what you say and what you talk about. So I'm glad that you said this podcast, and I would like to encourage everybody who is listening to my podcast, all of you who are my listeners. I don't look at this as a competition. I look at this as a journey for all of us to to help the country. So all my listeners should go and check out your podcast and subscribe to your podcast and share the same love to you, because I feel like we're both doing the same thing and we all have the same goal. So she shared the name, and I'm gonna put it in my description at the end of this video. So go and subscribe. I'm gonna be the first person to subscribe to your podcast. So be on the lookout for that
Thank
after
you.
this after this recording.
Okay.
So now we go into the topic I have no idea about. Poetry. How did you know you could do poetry, and how did you even start doing poetry? Like when you were little, did you know you're going to do poetry? So all those are the questions I have right now.
Okay. My love for writing goes back as far as I can remember. When I was little, my mom used to tell me that, like when I'm older, my mom used to tell me that when I was little, I used to write like songs and stuff like that. But of course, things that weren't very serious. So I didn't take them very seriously. She didn't take them very seriously. But when I started secondary in like senior two, I was blessed to be in a school that valued the writing culture. I was in Namagunga. Those who are from Uganda know it. Yeah, I was in a girls' school called Namagunga. And Namagunga.
I just recorded with somebody who was from Namagunga. My latest episode, she's called Dr. Jackie. She's a doctor. She was talking about mental health. So yeah, I think I'm familiar. Those are the fancy schools we used to look at.
Yeah. Anyway, the nicest thing about Namagunga is that Namagunga has a really good writing culture. So we have a really good writers club. We have a writers club. And during senior two, like my senior two to senior four, we used to have this thing where our patron would invite writers like journalists and professional poets to come and talk to us. Yeah, because there are people in the country who do poetry as a profession. There are poets, there are playwrights, there are novelists and stuff like that. So they had invited some of these poets to our school to talk to us, to perform for us their poems, to hype us up, encourage us, teach us how to write poems and all of that. And it was just so amazing. I had never thought that there would be people out there who could earn solely from writing. And they could be well off, because the people who came to our school, they didn't look like they were I know, earning minimum wage or something. Like they looked like they were earning, like not so much, but a good amount to sustain them. And I really had never imagined that that could have been possible, someone to earn from their writing, moreover poetry. So it really, really inspired me. And I remember after some time, a group of me and my friends, we started writing poems, sharing them at the Writers Club meetings, and we would go out to like different schools for poetry competitions and poetry slams, and we would perform and people would like our work. So we noticed that we actually think that we can write. And we shared the culture with the people who are younger than us, and it started growing like that. And in my senior 3 coming to senior 4, I was the vice president of the Writers Club, so it was more into so I went deeper into that, and I would perform at school and out. So the love just kept growing. Then in the lockdown was when I realized that this is something that I actually want to do, because I'd always wanted to do journalism. I'd always wanted to do journalism, because the thing of talking and interacting with people and looking for stories, writing stories, has always been in me. But with time, I realized that I wanted to do journalism, not because it's something that I had loved so much, but it was something that I was familiar with. And, everyone used to tell me that they felt like I could be a great journalist. And, it's just something that I went for, because, being paid to talk and interact with people, and that it looked like a dream come true to me. But the more I thought about it, the more I interacted with people who do poetry and read poems, read about different people who were earning. Like it was just something that really really inspired me. And I felt like this is what I want to do when I grow up. My whole life, it's something I want to die doing.
That's crazy that something like that can grow. And just listening to you talking about your school, how you picked up interest in that. I used to like debate in school. My high school, I was the education and library, and I would do like all the debates planning and all that. I went to Chisubi Mapea. It's not a fancy school. That was my advanced high school. But I thought I'm gonna be a lawyer, and I thought, because I really like to argue about facts and like talk stuff about that. But it's pretty cool that you picked that up, and it's something you're looking at right now to actually just go even beyond that. Who is somebody that inspires you? Who is a poet that inspires you, like you look up to?
Poets that inspire me. There are two. Okay, of course, there are very many poets that I like, but there are two that inspire me the most. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, it depends. They're both male. So my first, he's called George Mpanga. His stage name is George the Poet. He is someone that inspires me so much. He's even the reason why I went into podcasting and because he has his own podcast where he, talks about different things using his poetry. He's based in the UK though, but he's Ugandan.
I know him. I've listened to a few of his poetry. I follow him on social media. So
yes, like that is someone that I really, really look up to. He's so strong, and he's so incredibly talented, and he has a lot of love for his country and for the things that he does. Like he's so passionate. That's something that really, really inspires me about him. And then there's another poet, but he's based in Uganda. He's called Davis. His stage name is Davis the Poet, but he's Davis in Subuga. But now this one is someone who I'm fortunate to know, because he's in the country. So he's someone that I know, someone that I interact with, and I'm actually really, really close to. Davis's poetry is so, it's so heartfelt. the most important thing about being a poet is being in touch with your emotions and being able to bring them out and make them yours. Or even though you're writing about someone else's story, being able to personalize that. And I think that's something that Davis does so well. His poetry is so passionate, it's so heartfelt. He's an amazing performer, and he is so dedicated to what he does. And at least him I can say it because I actually know him and I have interacted with him. But you know the thing that pushes me to really, really admire these people is how passionate they are. Because a lot of people will tell you that poetry is not something that you can earn from. It's not something that you can say that you do and feel proud of. But these guys are so passionate and so proud about the things that they do, and that's something that really, really inspires me to be prouder.
That's really good that you bucked your reasons. Some people can have people they look up to, but they don't have a reason why. Oh, I just like him. But you going ahead and explaining why. And also having somebody in the country that you look up to. We all grew up having dreams of people that we'll never meet, or like even people who like, oh, I admire this person, which is not bad, but like the chances of you meeting that person are way higher than, so that's why we need way higher than whatever you can imagine. But that's why we need people in our own country that we can look up to, somebody where you can call and you're like, hey, I look up to you on this, like somebody who can guide you. That's really cool that there's at least somebody you look up to and he's in the same country. So what's your ultimate goal in poetry?
My ultimate goal, basically what I want to do, I want to do poetry, both written and performance. So of course, the biggest thing that I want to achieve is I want to be a poet who has made it here. Like in Uganda, a lot of people have so much stigma towards the creatives industry in Uganda. And I think my ultimate goal is to show people that creatives too can make it. Yeah. Of course, I can say that, yeah, I want to be successful. I want to win this award and that award and this award and that award. But I think my ultimate goal is making it so that other creatives who are either older than me or younger than me or my age know that they can make it too.
That
I don't
is
know whether
nice.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. And like people, when you ask that question, people will be like, hey, I want to go to this country, I want to do this. But yours is about inspiring other people to look at you and say, oh yeah, she made it, I can make it too. That's a goal that everybody should have. um Maybe the other question I forgot to ask while we're talking about poetry, I know there's different kind of poetry. I don't know any kind, but in just my head, I'm thinking there should be like different kind of poetry. So what kind of poetry do you do, and what different poetries are there, if you can tell us?
Okay. The best way I can, of course, people can choose to divide poetry into topics like activism poetry, poetry about activism. Sorry. Like talking about children's rights, humans' rights, women's rights, stuff like that. Then, of course, there is poetry about death. There's poetry about love, all kinds of love, romance, family love, friend love, things like that. Then there is poetry about, self-discovery, internal conflict, things like that. Yeah, a lot of the poems that I write are based on internal conflict, self-discovery, things that disturb people internally, and how they can use their internal struggles to deal with the world around them. yeah, that's basically what I do. Then, of course, there's dividing it into, page poetry. Page poetry is like those short poems that follow rhyme schemes that are really, really deep, that have a lot of poetic devices like metaphors, similes, stuff like that. And then there is spoken word, which I think very many people are familiar with. Spoken word is, the best way I can explain it is saying that it's performance poetry, but it's a little bit simpler than page poetry because it's written to please the ear. So it's not supposed to be very complicated because it's written to be performed once. And if you're performing it and you make it too complicated, people won't be able to understand you. And as a poet, your main job or your goal is to communicate a message. So if someone has failed to understand your message or has failed to derive a message, because sometimes people can take these things differently, then you probably have failed. So spoken word is a little bit easier so that people can understand, but it's really good with the ear, like the rhyming and the wordplay and all of that. That's the best way I can divide.
Have you listened to, there's a Christian group, I think they're from the US. They do poetry, but it's like about like Bible stories and all that. I've forgotten the name. I used to watch them on YouTube. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like a group. It's a lady who leads it, I think, and then the other guys. I can't remember the name, but they're really good. When I remember, I'll send it to you and see if you know them. But anyway,
Yeah.
we're almost coming to the close of this podcast. I usually try to keep my podcast and like within 30 minutes. But so they told me you're a model too. How did you get into modeling?
Modeling is something that I just started really, really, really recently. So I can't say that it's something that, I've moved far in.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I know Jane. There's this modeling competition that we're in where they train girls how to model, branding themselves as modeling, the different kinds of modeling. They teach us how to do runways and editorials and how we're supposed to behave, etiquette and all that. It's called Top Model Uganda. So that's the platform in which I've been doing my modeling, the training and the pictures and all of that.
Yeah.
But I can't say modeling is something that I've moved so far in because I haven't done so much. I haven't done anything outside Top Model Uganda. But yeah, modeling is something that I hope to grow in, but it's something I really, really love to do.
Don't you think you have like you just trying to keep yourself busy? Like you have like school, podcast, poetry, modeling, which it's not bad. I like to keep myself busy. Like even right now, when
Yeah,
I'm not
I
working,
understand.
when I'm not working, I want to be recording a podcast, like I want to be editing a podcast. I don't want to keep my mind like just bored. I don't want like being bored, like is that, how do you feel about that? Like you
Of
having a
stuff
lot
to
of
do.
things on your plate.
Okay. The thing that's fortunate on my side is that the things that are occupying me are things that I love. So sometimes I don't know if you can still see me well because it's getting a bit
Mhm.
dark here.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
I
still
can
see me
see you.
well.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. All right. So I think the thing that's really fortunate for me is that I am doing things that I love. So even when it gets hard, like even when it gets hard or it gets tiring, or I have to make a podcast episode this week and edit it, but then on Saturday I have model training and I can't, and okay, and I don't have time to rest, I don't have time to breathe in between all of that. It's worth it, can I say, because I'm doing things that I am so passionate about. So sometimes the fact that I'm even busy or I'm so occupied slips my mind. Of course, sometimes I get really, really stressed out, but yeah, the fact that I'm doing things that I love. And what's even more fortunate is that now in school, now in school. I've finished, I'm now doing advanced level,
Yeah.
and I've narrowed down in my subjects. Of course, they're a bit wider, but at least now I'm doing things that I love, because I'm going to be doing history, economics, and literature, and stroking sub math. Those are things that I really love a lot. So
Hell,
even
so much.
education, yeah. So even education, it's not going to be it's going to stress me, but it's not going to be something that's going to hurt me so much, because I'm doing things that I love.
Yeah.
So it's a bit easier for me.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. Like that's the same way. Like I do things, so I won't waste my time on something I don't love, I wouldn't even try, because
Yeah.
I do the podcast because I love it. And that's I just before I say recording this podcast, I just shared a clip on my not a clip, but we made 2.5 2.6 thousand listeners on my podcast. So I was putting a quote from Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is talking about how you're doing something, the job, because you love it, and that's the only way you're gonna enjoy it. So that makes a good point. So anyway, what has been your life lesson?
I think my biggest life lesson is, that's a bit tough, but I think my biggest life lesson is to value passion projects.
Mhm.
You understand what I mean by passion projects, right?
You're gonna explain.
Yeah. Okay. Passion projects are like passion projects are, things. Okay, things that you do basing off like passion. For example, how you like talking and
Mhm.
sharing your opinions. So you do a podcast, and you put your time into it. You buy equipment. You teach yourself how to edit, you look for guests, you make research, stuff like that. Or for example, how someone can love to cook, and they invest money and time into learning how to do it, into perfecting their craft, into stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you can still see
I
me.
can still see you. Yeah, don't worry. I only have two questions left, so we're gonna end that. But yeah, I can still see you.
Anyway, yes, I'm saying that a lot of people don't think about monetizing their passions.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's something that you really really love, that you really really love to do, but you don't think that it can make you money. You're not thinking wide enough, you're not thinking outside the box. But I really believe that it's very very okay, it's very, what's the word, like it's very good. Okay, it's
Mhm.
very good, and you benefit a lot. You
Yeah.
benefit more from doing something, like monetizing something that you love, rather than monetizing something that you think is acceptable, or according to the things that you studied, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because it will be a struggle, but the struggle will be worth it,
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
doing something that you love. So it's as if a little bit of the burden is lifted off your shoulders. But you're doing something you love, and you're earning from it. You
Yeah.
understand? Huh?
Mhm.
So I think the best thing this experience has taught me is to value passion projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely. That is a great answer, and the way you explained it. So the last two questions. Who would you like to see on the podcast next? Who would you like to see on our podcast? It could be anybody. Um, and I like to say, when you recommend somebody, you're gonna have to help us connect to the person. It could be anybody. It could be a celebrity. It could be a friend. It could be my podcast. I don't really pick. Anybody can come. Whoever wants to talk. So,
Anybody. Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
if you can't think of anybody right now, I can
I
give you.
think
Uh huh. Go ahead.
uh I think I really want one of my favorite Ugandan poets to be here.
Okay.
I really want Davis. I really want Davis to. I would love Davis to be on this podcast.
All right. You and I are gonna do the job of getting him on the podcast. I'll contact him on my side. You contact him on your side. I'm gonna get to you actually sending me his contact, and I'll see. I usually like to send people an email on that. So anyway, thank you very much for coming to my podcast, and thank you for speaking with us. It was fun having you on here, and I appreciate. I see it's getting dark there. I'm sorry to take a lot of your time, but I appreciate it.
Oh no, please! I have really enjoyed being here and talking to you. Thank you so much for hosting me. It's been a great opportunity.
All right, thank you very much. Hey there, I am Bonnie Kibuka, the host of the Ugandan Boy Talk Show. Thanks for watching my video, and don't forget to hit subscribe and share with a friend. Tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for a new episode about my podcast. And for more information about this podcast, follow me on my Instagram page, talk_show_256.